Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's great to be back amongst some old friends here today to have what I hope will be a very robust and informative discussion about something I hope that we can all agree on. I have to say I am a little concerned about the outcome of this hearing, however, considering that the Senate has actually already taken a position against this ballot question. Kind of wondering why we would have a hearing on an issue that the Senate has already actually sent a very lengthy letter to our Attorney General about, trying to claim that it's unconstitutional and that the Senate has serious concerns. There's about a 13-page letter from the General Counsel, the Counsel of the Senate, to our Attorney General opposing this. I'm not sure that you've had the chance to see this, but I do encourage members, especially of the Senate, to take a look at this because the Senate's already taken a position against this ballot question. At least the Counsel and the Senate President, who I'm sure has informed the Council, seem to have taken such a position. Even though it's been claimed that this hasn't been reviewed at all, it actually has by at least some people who have enough authority to write on behalf of the Senate to the Attorney General's office. So I'm going to submit this to you for your review, just as a first and foremost, just because we are all here for a hearing on this issue, and I would hope that this hearing would be fair and would actually give us our chance to talk about why this is important to us. And I know that this is not a new issue that we're talking about. During my 10 years in the legislature, a lot of us supported public records reform. I had the opportunity, alongside of many of you, to vote on public records reform. Actually, during the first few years that I was in office, we actually voted on a public records reform bill where we updated public records laws for the rest of Massachusetts state government entities. Didn't include ourselves. And I appreciate coming in today to hear about all of the sides of this issue and all of the concerns that people have on both sides of this argument. I can't say that during my time in the House when we were voting on public records reform that this was as concerning to members of the House during the time that we voted on public records reform. I don't remember colleagues running over to me and talking about different issues of privilege for our municipal officers, our mayors. I don't think that they talked about privilege for constitutional officers who all follow the public records laws. And certainly it was not something that was viewed in a negative light by the legislature. In fact, I remember folks being really proud of the progress that we made when we voted to support that. And I was proud to support that reform legislation back then, and I believe that was a bipartisan effort. It's my hope that this too can be something that is a nonpartisan issue that we can agree should be passed into law. This simply seeks to bring some parity between what all of our municipal officials and cities and towns are doing and what the legislature is doing. Looking at different state agencies and what they make available to the public, I know most of us will agree that the records that are made public by these state agencies should continue to be made public from those state agencies. But when the conversations are had amongst the legislators, from my recollection during my time in the legislature, about the legislature being subject to the public records law as well, I've heard really not a lot of support. In fact, I've heard a lot of distaste for that conversation to even be had. Now, why do I think that that's the case? Besides my opinion that it's due to the fact that the Speaker and Senate President, and this isn't any one Speaker or Senate President, just to be clear, this is Speakers and Senate Presidents throughout history who have not supported this. We know that the Speakers and Senate Presidents have a tremendous amount of control, so if we didn't pass something, it was likely due to the fact that the Speaker and Senate President at the time did not want to pass this legislation. But I also think that the reason why legislators have been opposed to public records reforms for its own body is because of the tremendous amount of confusion about what actually is subject to the public records reforms that are being sought. So I want to be crystal clear in what we are seeking to do in this public records reform ballot question. First and foremost, we are not seeking to view anybody's personal text messages, personal emails, conversations amongst staffers about policy initiatives that are being worked on. We're not seeking to view conversations about who's picking up coffee at what time or when their bathroom break is, okay? Those are not the things that we're seeking to review. What we want to make accessible to the general public is not those types of personal interactions between human beings about the policies you're trying to work on, the legislation you're trying to craft, or those things. This coalition for Healthy Democracy, had the wisdom in drafting this legislation to consider those concerns regarding legislative privilege. And I believe that this coalition, and I do believe that you should be able to talk about your policies that you're seeking to implement, and you should be able to communicate about those things, that some of those things would most likely constitute being considered one of your powers, a power of the legislature, right? To vote on bills, to vote on budgets, to work on things like that. And this coalition did not, because of that concern, include that into this language. What this bill seeks to do is look at basic administrative and business records and documents. It seeks to make available to the general public, frankly, things that I've been trying to audit but haven't been able to get access to. And I decided to take over this ballot campaign because even though I'm trying to sue and get access to court right now to get access to financial receipts, state contracting and procurement information, just those basic financial documents, I haven't been able to get access to those things. And I believe that those documents shouldn't just be available to you or even just available to the Office of State Auditor. I actually believe those documents should be available to every member of the general public who wants to view them. And the reason why I want that to happen, the reason why I believe that, is because contrary to what some of you might think, I want people to trust this legislature. I believe that this legislature is trying to do some really important work on a lot of important fronts. But the public trust, in my opinion, is at an all-time low. And people do not have confidence in their state government the way that they should have confidence in their state government. When their state auditor can't get access to financial receipts, it causes concerns. People just want to know that they can see the record about how their tax dollars are being spent. They want to know that if they have a basic question about business and administrative costs or what's going on in process and procedures in those areas, that they can get access to that information. They can't. And because they can't, they're concerned. And when people can't get access to basic documents like that, what happens? They think the worst, right? What are they hiding? Why can't they make these basic records available? Why can't we see what's going on? And then the assumption is that something is wrong. Here's an example of an email thread from my staff. My office is subject to public records laws. Oops, excuse me. Hope that doesn't ruin the microphone. But this is an example of a receipt, just the email communications about this expenditure. It's actually a very exciting receipt. This is a receipt for 3-ring binders that my office purchased from WB Mason. Now, what I can see from the comptroller's website is that the legislature also, just like my office, does business with W.B. Mason. I don't find it to be an incredibly big deal that people can call my office and get access to this. I mean, it's not really the most exciting of records to me, but it is a matter of public record if anybody does want to look and find out what types of binders are we using. Well, why aren't they using 2-ring binders? They're using 3-ring binders. Not really exciting stuff, but a public record nonetheless. This is the type of record that we are asking the legislature to make public. Your basic receipts, again, that I can't get access to for the audit I'm trying to conduct of these receipts to verify that the purchase that you made at W.B. Mason was for what you claim it was. There's a receipt right there. See that? Not a big deal. Contracts. We know that the legislature has had some challenges with sexual harassment. I was in the legislature when we took steps to reform policies around sexual harassment to make sure that there's training. Our office does sexual harassment training as well in the Office of State Auditor. We contract with a vendor to provide sexual harassment training in the Office of State Auditor. This is the contract with that vendor. It says how much it was for. It says that it went to these vendors. It proves that we contracted with them. The associated emails for this contract are made available to members of the public who want to see what communications happened between my staff and this vendor. For people who are concerned about contracts and, the executive branch, I know that we've been talking a lot. I know that the post-audit and oversight hearing is providing oversight to the executive branch right now and conducting a hearing over the Department of Transportation because of some challenges with executive branch contracts. Those records have to be made available for people to review so that we can make sure there was no funny business going on, because we know there were a lot of allegations. It's pretty simple just to, in agencies that are subject to public record, pull the record and review it. Who was involved, who was talking about it, whose signature is on the contract. It's just all available. It's right there. When people have questions about expenditures, generally speaking, there's a really easy answer, and it's easy to just provide documents for it. But I'm wondering who here, and during the Q&A, if anyone wants to enlighten me, I'd love to hear. If you do know, that would be great, because I think this public records reform bill would make that opportunity available to everybody. But I'm wondering if any documentation exists. I have some notes here. There's $1.95 million spent by the Senate in the last 2.5 years on management consultants, stating essentially, and I quote, management, business professional, and administrative services. And that's a rough estimate right there. But there are no vendors listed. There are no vendors listed. So maybe I'm missing it. Maybe it's an oversight. But I would love it if I could get some documentation about that, just to see what that was for. Because it was coded under C23, which in my understanding is contract employees. And I'm sure that there are some records that do exist for this. But you can't see that if you just go on the comptroller's website. You'll just have a one-liner that says management, business, professional, administrative services. No idea who it's paid to. No idea where that much money went to. And someone like me would just have questions about that. Just to say, what was that for? Being concerned about the budget and taxpayer expenses. Those types of documents would be covered in the public record reform bill that we're trying to pass on the ballot. There were legal services provided to both the Senate and the House. I respect attorney-client privilege, and I understand that attorney-client privilege exists with any attorneys that you hire. The invoice for these services, however, that's a matter of public record. The invoice, the amount of payment, what went to, just that document, whatever that is. Are those available? Those would be made available. Purchases, like I'm seeing, Home Depot, roughly $12,000. Could be desks, could be furniture, could be shelves, or what have you. It's a lot of money, right? $12,000 at Home Depot. Most of us go to the Home Depot, okay? We know what exists in that store. We keep receipts, for the most part, I hope. Do receipts exist for that just demonstrate that if, for example, the Senate was buying shelves or what have you, that's just what was purchased, just to document it, so that people can check the record and make sure that the record reflects what was stated the money was spent on. That would be made available to members of the general public. Friends, these are just basic records that every other entity has to make available to the public. And I am not positive, but pretty confident that the vast majority of the legislators on this committee have also not seen receipts for these types of things. Because I remember being in the legislature and not even being able to get access to receipts myself when I was in the legislature. I remember one time, Senator Friedman, you might remember this, when we were debating employee health care before our employees were given access to health care on day one, when they still had to wait months before they got access to health care. And thank you for passing that. But when we were still debating it, I remember getting up, it was in the Senate, and saying that our employees should have access to health care on day one. It was in the pandemic period, it was in the shutdown period. We had employees coming to us and saying that they couldn't get access to employee health care. And then when I approached leadership said, well, we just don't have the money for it. So I said, okay, well, I would like to see the budget that we have, because I would like to advocate for this, but I can't really truly advocate the way that I want to be able to if I don't have access to where the money is going and what it's being spent on and how it's being spent. And I just hope to see some receipts and documents during that time. But I never got access to the records that I needed to be able to make my case, so I just had to make my case based on my passion for employees getting health care on day one. This is to make sure that people have the tools they need and the information they need to be their own best advocate. We all remember when we were in grade school, well, at least those of us of a certain age who remember chalkboards. But when chalkboards used to exist in most schools, above the chalkboard there was usually some sort of a colorful poster or a banner, and it usually had a motivational saying on it. And I remember one in particular that was one of my favorites, and it said, "Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power." And I internalized that, and I believed that, and I still believe that to this day. Knowledge is power. It's power. And when we as elected officials believe that knowledge belongs only to a select few and not to everybody, what does that say? It says we believe that we should just have all the power. The power belongs to the people. The power belongs to the people. How can we say that we want people to come into this building and to advocate for their causes and to be able to advocate effectively and expect them to take us seriously if the records they need to be able to advocate for what they believe in are withheld, and we say, sorry, only the Speaker, only the Senate President, only a few people in the business office can get access to those records? It's really beyond past time that this get done. This is an easy one for the legislature. I really hope that members of this committee go back to your leadership teams and explain to them that while I appreciate these hearings going on, that I'm also, unfortunately, keenly aware of how this works if Madam President and Mr. Speaker don't want this to happen. I believe that it does nothing but harm this institution for this committee to oppose such an easy decision, and that if this committee opposes, like this letter from Senate Counsel opposed, something so simple about access to basic administrative and business records that does not interfere with your work as legislators, that does not interfere with your constituent conversations, those are exempt under this. Your conversations with your constituents are exempt under this. That if you don't pass this and you don't support this, and we have a repeat of what happened last time around, that we're gonna have a repeat of what's happening right now concerning the last time around, with residents across the Commonwealth being furious at this legislature for not releasing basic documents. So I'm asking you to make the records that this body has been refusing to make available to my office available to every single resident of the Commonwealth. And I believe that is your duty to do so. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
The Fiscal Alliance Foundation is a nonpartisan, nonprofit 501c3 organization. Visit our website to read more about our alternative energy policy studies, sign up for important email updates, make a tax-deductible contribution, and follow us on social media.